We're all conscious of the great work that we all do as architects across a really broad spectrum. We just need to talk about it.
Business of Architecture, episode 225. Hello, Architect Nation. I'm Enoch Sears, and this is the podcast for architects, where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. As a podcast listener, get free instant access to my 4-part architecture firm profit map by going to freearchitectgift.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of BQE Core. BQE Core is office management software for architects. Peter Drucker famously said, "What's measured improves." BQE Core lets you easily measure your key financial performance indicators, and it's dead simple. Get insights on the profitability of your firm with a beautiful and easy to customize graphical dashboard. Core gives you the power you need to grow your firm and keep your hard-earned profit. And they have pricing structures that work for the smallest of sole practitioners to the largest of firms. Learn more and get a free trial at businessofarchitecture.com/demo. Today we speak with architects Peter Exley and Jane Frederick. Peter Exley has established an international recognized practice of architecture for children, families, and communities, elevating the standards of design for learning and play environments. He's the co-founder of Architecture is Fun, a Chicago-based architecture, design, and consulting firm. Robert Venturi, FAIA, and Denise Scott Brown, honorary FAIA, once noted that the projects of Architecture is Fun are works of significance and relevance, joy and seriousness, range and depth. Dedicated to helping the next generation of architects, Peter has also been an adjunct professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago for more than 20 years. Peter has served the AIA in a number of roles, including as president of AIA Chicago, Illinois, regional representative to the Strategic Council, chair of the Public Awareness Campaign Subcommittee of the Public Outreach Committee, as well as a liaison to the Young Architects Forum. Jane Frederick is a partner at Frederick & Frederick Architects based in Beaufort, South Carolina. She's a fellow in the Aspen Global Leadership Network and currently serves on the American Institute of Architects board as one of 3 at-large directors. Jane is also the recipient of the Architect Marketing Institute's Business Achievement Award. Today we speak with Jane and Peter about a resource developed by the AIA to help us as architects and designers do a better job of communicating the value we bring to our clients, our cities, and our environments. This resource is the AIA Message Book, which you'll hear about in today's episode. You know, in design school, we're taught to communicate with pictures. Today we speak about communicating with words. Well, Peter Exley and Jane Frederick, thank you for joining me today on the Business of Architecture.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Enoch.
So today we're specifically going to talk about the AIA Message Book that you helped put together, which is a great resource. Before we jump into that, however, I'd just like our listeners to get to know each of you individually, a little bit of your background, your firm, and your position or your contribution to the American Institute of Architects. So Jane, can we start with you? Give us a summary of who you are so our audience listeners can get to know you.
Sure. My husband and I have a small firm in Beaufort, South Carolina, where we specialize in custom residential work. We have 6 employees total, so we're, fairly small. I've been on the national board. I was on the Strategic Council. Then I was elected as a at-large member when the board size shrunk. So I'm on the board of directors, and I'm chair of the Public Outreach Campaign. In the past, I've also been President of AIA South Carolina, and I have been involved in both NCARB, which is the National Council of Architecture Registration Boards, and NAB, which is the accrediting board for the universities. So I've sort of been all over the place in the architectural community.
A lot of contribution. Excellent. Peter.
So I am the co-founder and principal of Architecture is Fun. We're a Chicago-based consulting, design, architecture firm. We were founded on April Fool's Day, 1994. That's when I noticed we didn't have real jobs anymore. And we're well known, I think, for making everyday life fun for our clients. We worked a lot on public space and projects for informal education all over the country and a little bit internationally too. And for AIA participation, I was president of AIA Chicago in 2013. And like Jane, I've served on the Strategic Council, and this is my first year on the national board. I've also been the board and Strategic Council liaison to the YAF, Young Architects Forum.
Tell me about some of the focuses right now of the National Board of the American Institute of Architects. What are the themes or things that you as a body right now are focused on?
Well, since Peter and I both serve on the Public Outreach Committee, so that's one of the main focuses that we've been looking at, and the message book is one of them. We also have, hopefully everybody got to see the I Look Up campaign, which is our film challenge. It was extremely successful. This was the third year that we have done it, and architects and filmmakers partner and produce 3-minute films. We have a competition, so there's prizes. Peter awarded the main winners a few weeks ago at the Chicago Biennale, and then I'll be awarding the People's Choice Award in a couple of weeks in New York. So we're getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of good stories, and that's the thing that we really are trying to help architects do, is tell their stories. And the film challenge is very much a part of that.
So the film challenge talks about, it empowers architects to share their stories. So what we'll do is we will link to, in this video episode on businessofarchitecture.com, we'll put some of those entries, especially the winners, so people can see those.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, some of them will bring tears to your eyes. They're so good. I mean, they're really good.
Yeah, they're great illustrations, I think, of how architects are really activated in the arena of social justice and the critical contributions we're making to the built environment in that respect. I think one of the things, to answer your question too, about the work of the board this year, one of the things that's defined it for me, and I would not have predicted this, but is how we've been reacting and articulating where we stand, and the where we stand statements on the mission and values of the Institute, I think, are really important and critical messages, talking about sustainability, resilience, immigration, et al. So I believe that's really important work, and it's an extension, naturally, of the things that we're going to talk about with the message book. The architects are talking eloquently and succinctly and in a relevant way on the issues that are defining our time.
I think that's a really good point, Peter. And one thing about the where we stand, they're based on our policies that the boards had adopted, and we review a third of those policies every year in a 3-year cycle. And then those where we stand statements can be found on AIA.org, our website.
How are those where we stand statements, how are those developed?
Well, as I said, they start with our policies that we have, and the policies are vetted throughout the membership. So they start, they're in 3 different areas, practice, the world, and I've forgotten the third one. I guess the individual architect is the third one. And so that we, the ones that are being reviewed every year, there's a committee that starts reviewing them. Then they send it to interest groups. So that would include the board. It would include knowledge communities that might have expertise in that topic. It would go to the CASE, which are the component executives. It goes to a wide cross-section of the membership for their input. So they are policies that are, deeply held with all of our membership. So that's how they're developed. And then the where we stand went into more detail based on those policy statements.
Okay, so Peter, you mentioned the resource, the AIA Message Book, and this is a document that's very useful that the AIA has produced recently, largely through both of your instrumentality. You've been very instrumental in putting this out there. Tell me, either one of you, what is the objective of the AIA Message Book?
Well, initially this began as one of those things that members are craving, and this is for the Institute to articulate to the public what architects do. And the Institute did significant research, and as we all know, architects are beloved by everybody. We're respected by almost universally. But what we do is mysterious and sometimes elusive. We're perhaps seen as a commodity that is not necessarily affordable to the everyday person in the street. So the message book is, I suppose, one of the strategies that we have in a quest to demystify what architects do, and it's a collective effort. The tools in the message book are enablers to all of us to talk more eloquently about what we do as architects.
I think, following up on that, I think sometimes architects are our own worst enemies in talking about our work. Either we use jargon, which is, not user-friendly to our clients. Instead of saying windows and doors, we talk about fenestration, and, we know what we're talking about, but your client may not. And then the other thing is we tend sometimes to, if somebody makes a negative comment in, why is an architect so expensive in doing this project, we continue saying those negative words instead of saying something instead that we bring value to the project, that we understand the problem, we can foresee some issues that might come up and bring value that will save money in the long run, potentially.
So what I'm hearing both of you saying is that the AI Message Book is a resource to help architects in general and designers in general as well be able to use language in a way that clearly communicates and underscores their value.
Yeah.
Right.
Simple concept.
Yeah, and then it teaches you how to set it up. So you have a proof point. I mean, you have a headline, and then you need to have proof points that follow it up. And so those would either be facts, it would be, I can't say it, statistics, or it could be a story that happened in one of your projects. It could be a quote from a client. So it's not just architects bring value to your project. You go into the story on how you bring value. And an example would be, we had a client recently that her house is right on the beach, and she loved the house. It was a family house, but she had remarried, and they now have 7 children, and they needed more space. And as we were going through, doing the cost analysis of whether you stay or do you, you renovate the house, add on to it, or tear it down, and then talking about the house was in the floodplain too. So she really liked the bones of the house. We kept it. We raised it up out of the floodplain. And that was not something she had even considered doing. And so that was something that we brought to the table. And then when Hurricane Irma passed through last month, there was 4 feet of water under her house, but none in her house. So, that was, a good solution, saved her money in the long run, and she's getting the house that she wants. So, giving stories like that is what we really need to be doing, is telling stories about our projects and our clients.
Peter, do you have similar stories that you tell when engaging with clients, or examples you can give about how storytelling works into that process?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones is we worked on a project in Chicago for a high school, and it was for the design of some public space outside some classrooms. Well, the story, I guess the icebreaker is that this project elevated the test scores of 200 students. So, that gets the attention of an academic client. And the proof point with that is this public space that we created, filled with curriculum and as a resource for faculty and students. It was very popular within the school. 29% more girls signed up for AP Science with this new facility. Now, it's a combination of a lot of factors, but the space was impactful. Within the following year, test scores in AP Science across the board had gone up 37%. That's a great sort of anecdote that goes with the story about good architecture can motivate students and faculty, can help retain faculty. And that's a story that a client can take to the bank. It's the difference between getting into to college and getting into a college, your first choice college. It's the difference between getting into your first choice and getting in on a free ride. And these are things that impact people's lives. So that would be sort of, the headline. We're going to improve this environment, and there's going to be a measurable impact.
Okay,
everybody we know, as every architect we know, has a story like that embedded in their project and in their career.
I'm going to read out here the section on headlines from the AIA Message Book. First of all, it gives some examples of some headlines, and you both gave us some excellent examples. And then it says, verbalize each headline one at a time. Think of how to frame the narrative introduced by that headline. Then choose a proof point, which Jane mentioned, a story, quote, fact, or statistic to prove the headline. Your goal is to implant one takeaway, one key message you want your listener to remember, such as architects take pride not in just working for clients, but working with them throughout the design process. Can you give more information or extrapolate a little bit on this concept of headlines?
Well, in the message book, they give 4 different categories where they've explored more in depth on the headlines. One is architects work with clients, which you were just mentioning. One, architects strengthen society. The other one's architects design solutions, and architects transform communities. And if you think about architects transform communities, you might say working with an architect and designing the public spaces creates healthy communities by engaging in more physical activity. And then maybe you use, I believe it's Oklahoma City as the example, where the mayor really got into thinking about public spaces and public health, because Oklahoma City had been the least healthy city in the country. And so working with architects and landscape architects, they designed a number of interconnected parks, and people are using them and getting more healthy. So, using that as an example for the proof point for the headline that architects design healthy communities.
One of the great qualities, I think, of the headlines is their, in describing our projects, one of the things that we frequently illustrate is that architecture is a collaborative sport, and that all of these stories are about the architect's impact with a community and the participatory process and the participatory nature of what we do. And I think the headlines might come as a surprise to some clients that, oh, you're ready to work with us on this. This is something we do together. You don't just ride in on your white stallion and save the day. But no, we all go in this together, and we're listeners, and we're about to make a project with you.
What is the benefit that a design professional would have from going through this AIA Message Book?
It's really great training on how to talk about your projects. I think we were thinking more selfishly when we were developing it, was more how to talk about just architects in general and the AIA, but after it was developed, it's like, wow, this really helps you own a firm level, because you can talk about your own projects. You can talk about your individual firm or your individual project and how you're making a difference in the world, or how you're making a difference in your client's life.
We're very eager often in an interview situation, to tell a client that we're going to bring your project in on time and on budget, but hopefully we're all doing that. The stories that we should be telling are about how we differentiate through our work, through our exceptional education, our experience, the qualities that we bring to the table, and our ability, again, to do it with with the client, that it's about pulling the best out of their project.
Can you give me some examples of differentiation that you think have been successful?
You know, a friend of and colleague of Jane's and mine, Jack Morgan in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's getting a lot of love today. Shares with us a project that he did for a data center, and hypersensitive and critical building type for that client. And Jack talks about how the sort of critical factor in getting that project was guaranteeing or making sure that client had a building that was going to withstand a Category F4 tornado. That might not be, sort of most people's criteria for pondering, how to approach a building solution. But if you look at literally our climate, that is a life-saving decision that Jack and his firm make on behalf of that client. And not just life-saving, but, critical to, continued operation of that building. And Jack and his firm are acknowledged leaders in that field. I'm sure there's an accumulation of knowledge and expertise that contributes to that leadership, but their ability to articulate and understand that and communicate it to their clients has been very important and profitable for them.
You both have already given me some examples of how you use the concepts that are described here in the AIA Message Book personally in your own practice. Can you give me any other examples like that of work with past clients, or anything that can kind of really bring home how these things are applied and how they've helped each of you personally?
I was not going to say personally. I think a really good example that's I've gotten from the community and health knowledge community is how the research through having plants and windows and daylighting in hospital rooms helps speed recovery of the patients. So using that scientific background to be able to talk about why you're making design decisions really makes a big difference for clients.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm on the faculty at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I've been using the message book with my students, and it might be sort of a making light of it, but if you've ever been in a critique, we are not known for brevity, and the message book for my students is a great way for them to frame and open their critique presentations, and if we're building awareness in our youngest and emerging colleagues and getting them to work with these strategies, I think that bodes well for the way that as a profession in the future we'll be talking about architecture, and it means that crits are more meaningful and more on point.
Another area that we're using it in our firm, Enoch, is we have started doing virtual reality experiences with our project, and being able to talk to our clients, or really potential clients, that you'll be able to walk through your house before we ever finish the design or construction documents, to understand what it's going to be like and how you can experience that space, because a lot of clients have difficulty reading drawings, or if they can understand the plan, they can't really understand what it might feel like in 3 dimensions. And so having that opportunity, so that's, we bring to the table a different level of experience in your project before you get into the house. And so that's, a big concept that we talk about a lot with our clients too.
I would imagine that's going over pretty well.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. They all just go, wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great example, Jane.
How would you two, after working on this, how would you two suggest that designers, architects, interns get the most out of this guide?
The question we were waiting to answer. If AIA national staff and Peter and I and other members of our committee are available to help train component groups on the message book. AIA staff asked that there be about 75 people in the room to make it viable to send them out from DC. I know with Peter and me, if we're local, it doesn't have to be quite that big, but it's so we're able to train people how to use it, and it takes about an hour. It's pretty painless, and you also get 1.5 learning units for it, so it must be a little over an hour if we get 1.5 learning units. But it's so we're available to do that. It's also available on the website, which is aia.org/message book, and you can download it and go through it, and it's not rocket science. I think that you can read it and get a lot out of it on your own.
And if you're remote or if you're pulling an all-nighter, it's also going to be available on AIAU pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Peter, how would you suggest that people get the most out of the AIA Message Book?
Yeah, I'm repeating myself a little, but having the focus to talk about your project in positive ways ought to be second nature to us. Mm-hmm. And from a personal and practice level, just framing everything we do, from the opening line in a letter, in a proposal, to an interview, having a series of great headlines, not always being so modest and coy about what we do, just talking about the significant impact of the work through the context of whatever a client's mission is. It's a straightforward thing, and if we're practiced and prepared in this, the ramifications for our practices are, I think, significant. So I would just start doing it rather than waffling. And when that client or potential client at a dinner party says, "Oh, you're an architect. What kind of architecture do you do?" and they offer you residential or commercial, you should say to them, "Well, I do." Well, you should not say, "Oh, I do a little bit of both," and then just sort of ad lib on it. You should have a response, and it should be. For me, it's we put the fun in your everyday life, and that's an icebreaker. And then you can go on to say, this project I did improved the test scores of 200 students. That's where the conversation goes into specifics. And we're all conscious of the great work that we all do as architects across a really broad spectrum. We just need to talk about it through the types of or using the types of strategies that the message book trains us with.
Was there, in creating this message book, was there any controversy or internal conflict perhaps about things that maybe got cut that people wanted to include when you had this discussion? What were kind of some of the hard conversations behind the scenes? Was there anything that you had to cut out that didn't make it?
Well, I don't think there was really anything that difficult. We worked with a really good consultant, and I'm not going to tell you her name right now. I've forgotten. But they did a lot of research. The message book is based on research. It wasn't just our committee saying, "Oh, this is what we think," or "This is what I think." It was the positive words to use were worked through focus groups. They were really studied hard. The jargon has been collected over a number of years. I mean, we all know what our bad jargon is. And then it was tested as we went through. So I think what's important that this is a researched, tested product and not just a good idea. You want to add to that, Peter?
No, I mean, I don't have a recollection that we struggled to or that we omitted anything that we felt passionate about.
Right.
That's rare for an architect. We've got so many great ideas. The critical part about this it is to be succinct and to get that message across quickly. So that formula, headline, positivity, and proof points, it does it nicely.
Well, thank you both for joining me today. Is there any question that I should have asked that I didn't?
I'm really happy that you're interested in helping us evangelize this. I do believe that with actually very little investment, and this is a free commodity available from the Institute. So if AIA hasn't done anything for you lately, when you open the message book, you'll know that it has done this very nicely for you. It's a great thing, and we appreciate the ability to spread the word, and hopefully 90,000 American architects will be just doing this as second nature very soon.
Thank you, Peter. Jane, closing thoughts?
We appreciate you interviewing us, and Peter and I both agree that everybody needs to download the message book and start using it, so it will make a big difference in your talking about your projects and for your firm.
Excellent. So the link we mentioned earlier was AIA.org/message book. Is that the correct shortcut?
Yes, it is.
Message book. I'm going to try that. Just make sure it works here for our listeners here.
Or Google AIA and message book. It comes up very quickly.
It does. And you're right. It goes right to a page that talks about the book. There's a link to the PDF. And as you both said, I've been through the book myself, and it really does provide a very concise framework for being able to speak convincingly and persuasively, which is what I think we all aspire to do.
Great. Yeah, nicely put.
Okay. Peter Exley and Jane Frederick, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your service, everything that you do on behalf of architects in the profession. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
That is a wrap. As a podcast listener, get access to my free 4-part architecture firm profit map by going to freearchitectgift.com. You can also get it by texting the phrase profit map, that's 2 words, to the phone number 773-770-4377. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of BQE Core. BQE Core is office management software for architects. Peter Drucker famously said, "What's measured improves." BQE Core lets you easily measure your key financial performance indicators, and it's dead simple. Get insights on the profitability of your firm with a beautiful and easy to customize graphical dashboard. Core gives you the power you need to grow your firm and keep your hard-earned profit. And they have pricing structures that work for the smallest of sole practitioners to the largest of firms. Learn more and get a free trial at businessofarchitecture.com/demo. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world. Carpe diem.